Hey everyone, Professor Baldwin here. Today we're going to look at an example of factoring by grouping. Remember that factoring by grouping stands out because you'll have 4 terms. Now, before we actually group and factor, we always want to check, do we have a GCF? And no, these 4 terms do not have a factor in common. So we're going to move on to the next step of grouping. And 9 out of 10 times, you can group the first 2 terms together, and you can group the last 2 terms. If we look at the grouping of the first 2 terms, we need to figure out the GCF for those 2 terms. And the factor that they have in common would be y squared. If I factor out the y squared from those first 2 terms, the first term, we have a 2 times a y left behind. And the second term was y squared, but we factored out the y squared. So we're left with the placeholder of plus 1. Now look at that second grouping. That second grouping is 2y plus 1. Well, that's the binomial that we have left from our first grouping. So we know that that is the binomial we're going to need for our second grouping. And what do you factor out of 2y plus 1 in order to still have 2y plus 1? Well, the identity, 1. So we can factor out a 1. Now that we've grouped those and factored them, we're going to look at our remaining 2 terms and determine what they have in common. And the first term and the second term both have this binomial of 2y plus 1 in common. If we factor out the 2y plus 1, that leaves behind the binomial of y squared plus 1. So we've factored this polynomial by grouping. Now remember, anytime you can factor, you can check by using FOIL or distribution. Here, because we have 2 binomials, we're going to use FOIL. So we multiply the first 2 terms together. So 2y times y squared, which is 2y cubed. We multiply the outer 2 terms together, 2y times 1, which is a plus 2y. We multiply the inner 2 terms, 1 and y squared, which is a plus y squared. And we multiply the last 2 terms, 1 times 1, which is just 1. And notice that this check that we got from foiling is identical to that polynomial we started with. So we know that our factored form here of 2y plus 1 times y squared plus 1 is indeed correct.